Well, good day, everyone. Nice to meet you again. And today we have a fantastic guest, a personality, can I say a celebrity in Saudi
I would
Arabia,
hope so.
which is Hana Nemec. She's a media executive. I will let Anna introduce herself, but she has more than 15 years experience in media. I think you worked in all sectors from telecom, automotive, now AI. And so you've been around, as they say, but you will tell us a bit more. Yeah, so maybe let's just jump into it and tell us about a bit about yourself, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you so much for having me. Really excited for this conversation, and I'm really excited about in general what's happening now here in the kingdom, and also coming from abroad. I think that's what really brought me here originally to the kingdom, but now to see all the growth and all the amazing things happening, not only alongside Vision 2030, but even alongside all of the international players that are eager to come and visit. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I think it's a great time, and thrilled to be in this conversation with you about some similar topics, I think. So yeah, I'm Hana Nemec. I am serving right now as a communications and PR executive in a global brand, I could say. And I'm super passionate about not only being in the kingdom, but being an expat here in the kingdom and the opportunities that are really available here. So I came here about 10 years ago now, and I was born and raised in the U.S. I attended college there in the University of Toledo. Not quite as prestigious as some of these international universities you've worked with, but I've was there for my whole upbringing, and then I decided to move to Los Angeles. I converted to Islam actually when I was in college, and I moved to Los Angeles to pursue my career in real estate, a very different sector that I worked in now. And as you might have alluded to, I've been involved in quite a few different sectors through
Yeah.
my days in marketing and communications. So I first they were based in LA. I made a lot of friends that were Saudi. They became like my sisters, actually. And when I originally came, it was because I wanted to attend my best friend's wedding. And there was no opportunity for a single 23-year-old woman to come at the time without a visa or without any of the paperwork required. So the only thing I could do was to take a job here. So I did that. I took a job and
Okay.
moved here about 10 years ago, also to lead a PR team and a newly launched healthcare entity, actually, with zero experience in healthcare. But you learn that in communications, I think your skills can be applied to a lot of different sectors and areas. So I came originally thinking that I was just going to stay for the job for 2 weeks to attend the wedding, do a few visits, explore the country a bit as a avid traveler. And then I decided after I came that no, this is my home. The second I landed, I felt like this was my home. So I became very passionate about being here. And then, of course, this was before the announcement of Vision 2030. And after that, I've been able to grow in not only my career, but also my friendships, my knowledge of the culture, my closeness to the people here, and my excitement about what's going on. So that gives a little background. Maybe I've also
No,
worked in.
it's great, and I have to say, I mean, because I mean, you come from the U.S. There's a long history and a long-standing relationship between Saudi and the U.S. But Toledo and Ohio, I think your state gave 8 presidents to the United States.
Absolutely.
I was doing a bit of research. I didn't know it. Even Superman was created in Cleveland, Ohio. So it's actually,
Yeah.
and you are the birthplace for aviation, a lot of automotive industry. So actually, it's
You did the
Ohio
Google.
is quite famous. I know
It's
because
not.
I went to Michigan
Ohio's not
for
famous.
yeah, I was went to
Okay.
Michigan to study a bit at university for summer school, and I remember there was a lot of competition between Columbus, Ohio,
Absolutely.
and Michigan University. But
Absolutely. Oh,
and also
wait.
for those, yeah, no, go ahead.
Ohio, yeah. Oh, we have a saying. I say OH, and another person says IO, but as a Michigan fan, you probably can't do that. So that's okay.
Exactly. So I remember the competition. But and also just for those who are not from Saudi or from the Middle East, Anna didn't say exactly the name of the company she's working for. Now that doesn't mean she does not want to say it or it's not an important company. Actually, in this country, in Saudi, when you work for a very cool company, you generally don't say it. And that's a rule for that we all know. So that's a plus, not a minus. But for those who may be watching this video from Europe or another part of the world, yeah, it's very cool what she's doing.
Thank you.
No, glad to have you. And I mean, here, we are, HSA finance community. We are trying to create this community of finance professionals around the world, and we look at very different angles. And media is becoming really a hot topic. I mean, you have to communicate these days. We are doing the same, you and I, on this little chat, and you are the expert today. So, I mean, great journey to long way from Toledo to Riyadh, but I think you are now at the center of the world. And maybe we can ask you a couple of questions on media in general. We will not ask you about your
Absolutely.
job or anything confidential, but
Yep.
I mean, I think when you and I were chatting before. I remember during the great financial crisis, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, I watched him an interview he did just days ago. And he was saying that back then, of course, there was a huge mess, but one of the problems they had is that the firm was always trying to shy away from media exposure, and it was kind of a trait of the firm. And interestingly, here the other day, I was in a public event, and somebody came to me and said, here we have we are an investment firm in the Middle East. We have a media team, and the only task of the media team is to keep us away from the media. So it's still you have situations where you don't want to be in the media, in the limelight. But at the same time, what the CEO of Goldman Sachs, the former CEO, was saying just days ago, he said that was a problem because at some point we were always, so secretive. And then when the crisis hit us and we had to make our voice heard, our message across, we just didn't have the channels, we didn't have the skills, we were not prepared. So, I mean, 15 years later, the world has changed. It's all about media everywhere. Everybody wants to be in the media. It's very even difficult to let your message come across. So, what is your view in terms? You're great, big on authenticity, and I know that that's what you do every day. But how you make your message come across these days, which is so difficult, and there's so much noise out there.
Sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, in the last decade, especially now that everybody has a platform, maybe not everybody needs a platform is kind of
Yeah.
the feedback, that I get when I look at the global, communications. It's great that everybody can stay in touch, but sometimes people, they take that to the next level. They want to show the most perfect version of themselves, but it becomes very inauthentic. So, I will be very honest. I was in a meeting 2 minutes before we started this call, running around, making decisions, finalizing things, and then running up to be in the meeting. So this is my authentic self. But I think not everybody has the opportunity or thinks that their authentic self is what should shine through. And it's really important. I think that's not only true in personal communication, but also in corporate communication. So, a lot of times we like to polish our messaging to the best of our ability, but maybe sometimes people would resonate more with our messaging if we were more honest and more open and more, transparent about what makes us tick in each industry. So as an example of this, I could think about an example where I was working on an executive positioning for an executive, a very well-known global executive, and they were doing it in a language that they were not necessarily 100% comfortable with. So I said, why don't you incorporate that in the message? You don't need to polish it to be perfect in that language, but be honest and say, this is, by the way, my second or third language. So this is the reason that it's not perfect. And at the time, they were all like, oh, we could never say that. It has to be exactly, he's this big global figure. And I said, no, not really, because the thing that's going to resonate with people is that you're trying and that you as a huge executive are not perfect. So I think that in time, people are starting to see the true colors of people, especially now that AI is becoming such a huge part of communications and the messaging. And I think a lot of my colleagues are also, shocked when I go to write something, a press release or a social media post or et cetera, and I'm not using ChatGPT or I'm not using, another LLM. I'm doing it authentically. I can use them for the little parts I need or maybe to give me options, but I don't want to use them for the whole start to end message copy paste. It's very clear. I think everybody knows the M dash is in everything that's a AI tool, but there's other ways to be very, authentic, utilize technology, utilize whatever you need to, but still have a real message. So I think also that, corporates, some of them are more, they want to keep things to themselves, but then it also breaks down their relationships with the media. And I think one of the best parts about working in media is developing these long-term connections, these long-term relationships. And then, not necessarily that anybody would do a favor or change the messaging, but they're at least aligned with what you're doing and they understand the overall brand and communication strategy. So the closer the relationships there you have with the media, the better. And I think that straying away too far is only going to hurt you in the end, in my personal opinion.
I think so too. And you mentioned making decisions that you were just in a meeting moments ago. And I mean, you speak with decision makers, and today what we see with media is that whether they are politicians or corporate executives, they are under tremendous pressures because whatever they do, it's in the limelight. And some of them are natural communicators, some are not. And so, how do you see it? How do you help a decision maker to, how do you contribute to the decision-making process as a media expert? Because you look at things from a different angle than maybe just the business or the finance or the legal regulatory framework.
Sure. So I always say, in comms, we're doing our best sometimes to put, glitter on something that maybe doesn't need glitter. So we're trying to show the best light of that, whether that be a person or a company or a, announcement or a brand or whatever we're doing, whatever it is required from us. But in doing so, I think that, what I see is a benefit is that communications can really steer the conversation. So it's one thing to have the data, to receive the data, to understand the facts and figures and how things move around, but it's another to actually make the decision. So that's the reason that you have a board meeting, for example, to make a decision. It's not just here's the facts and figures, make a decision. It's here's the facts and figures, here's the background information, here's the details, here's the context, and all of that is communication. So we're able to not only craft the narrative, but also guide, kind of steer the conversation in one way. And of course, data, you can always pull it from good or bad side, but I think communications is the same. You can help to steer or navigate some of the conversations by giving context, by giving the bigger picture. And if you don't have communications as part of the overall decision-making process, then you'd be missing out on a huge, huge important piece.
Yeah, I think context and storytelling are two words that I use a lot as well because I learned my way that your context is everything. I mean, at some point in one of the companies I worked, context became so important that we had training where people were saying you even need to know whether the person you're talking to had a bad day or a car
Exactly.
accident because then their skills will be impacted. So you need to know exactly what is happening around you. Be very focused. Clear. And I mean, you mentioned also AI. Now, I'm a optimist on AI, so I know there's a lot of debate on AI. And I know that you mentioned that, I think in one of your posts, I read that you don't want to use AI too much and you like to be authentic and do your drafting. But you're lucky. You're American, so you're a native English speaker, and not everybody has that skill. And so what we saw, for example, in our company at some point, the level of the quality of the emails jumped after Copilot or GPT came out. I mean, completely, really interesting. So people were very succinct and they became narrators. But so how do you use AI as a media manager or a media executive? I know you don't want to use it, but how has he changed the way you produce stuff, or how will it change it if anything?
Sure. I would say actually, to be honest, like that, I think the post came out maybe in April, and now I've understood the wider context. It's something that I didn't have exposure to previously. Now I have quite a deep exposure, I would say, to AI.
Of course.
And I see that it's actually a huge benefit, and there are ways and areas to use it. For me, I don't want to use it necessarily as a personal branding. I don't think that it's helpful
Mm.
for me as a person. I would rather be very, candid and open, and I think one of the things that I'm most proud of maybe is the skills that I've developed in personal communications and one-on-one communications specifically. And I wouldn't want, my skill set to be weakened by continuing to use something to, make it better. Yes, it might make me better, but at the same time, it would make me, not who I am as a person, because we'll all then kind of steer towards the center median point. It won't keep our individualistic, what makes us, I would say. So I see that. But I do also see huge benefits in terms of media monitoring. I see tremendous benefits in terms of, ensuring that you're targeting the right audiences, finding where that sweet spot is in target audience, playing, advocating back and forth with it, maybe even, developing like a tool that or using a tool that you can create almost like a digital twin of a person, and then communicating back and forth with that person and saying, okay, I know that my decision maker is going to want to see A, B, C, D, E. Did I include this? And having the digital twin come back and say, no, you did not include this. This is the point that they're going to bring up around it. So there's a lot of actually, unique ways that are still under development, but developing at quite a rapid pace around AI. I would say for personal branding, I wouldn't personally recommend myself to use it to develop your personal brand, but tweaking your edits or making it more grammatically perfect, if that's not your skill set, this I have no issue with, and I don't think the world has an issue with this. I think
No.
what we come to see is that it's more when, I meet you in real life and you're a completely different person than you say you are on social media. Or, I've had conversations with people who are considered famous in social media on topics that they advocate for and they are considered a thought leader about. And when I ask them any actual substantial question, they have no idea. So then I was like, oh, this is all just a facade. And so I see, the positives and negatives of it.
Okay, so there is still the
There's
message
still hope.
crafting is still important. But how's the media sector? Because I'm legal, right? I work in the legal sector. I work with a lot of financial professionals as well. In legal, we're still not clear. A lot of people will say they don't use it, or they will try. They don't feel comfortable speaking about that. I have a feel, but we are a very traditional sector. I think we're just waiting to be disrupted, and I hope that will happen soon. But I guess the media it's more open-minded in terms of accepting innovation, right?
I think so. I've noticed so that when I've proposed to some outlets, some large scale outlets actually, why don't you utilize some of the AI tools to write the article? Because we send the press release. I don't want people to just post the exact same thing as our press releases go out because it's not again unique. There's no deep story behind it. It's just our narrative to the public. Though I'm thankful they get our exact narrative out there. I also want them to incorporate their own opinions, their own thoughts, their own, concepts around it. So I've suggested this to them and they're quite against utilizing AI. I don't know if it's, that's their public facing, opinion or they have a different opinion in private, but I do see that there's still some pushback. And also, people are afraid sometimes this is going to take over their job. But I think actually from my own career, I think my job is more important than ever now because I am bridging this gap between authenticity and technology and finding the sweet spot. And I think that, until we have cloned Hana Nemec, then I don't think that we're going to be able to do that in the exact way that I've been able to hone over the years. And I would say probably the same for legal. But I also think there's a lot of ways that will continue to come out to customize, agents, to customize our own, almost like our own staff under us to have the same kind of conceptual decision making as we're making. So same thing for legal, perhaps if you're working in a specific sector, you're only doing real estate law. I'm sure that there's guidelines and the legal codes to incorporate. Maybe you incorporate that into an agent, plus your own decision making, how you are, old examples, old case studies, and it could help you guide the decision quicker. Again, I see that this would be a benefit, but you still have to be there to lead it. You still have to be the one holding its
Yeah,
hand.
I tend to agree. And what we see, I mean, we are buying everything. I mean, I'm talking to AI vendors every day because I think you have to do it these days, and even to learn, just if not to use it. But we notice that productivity increases a lot. And it just doesn't replace actually the job you're doing. You're just doing so much more that you actually end up working more, and because you become so productive, and you can also free up time for to do a bit more strategic work at times, or just. And the other thing we see is there's a bit of a convergence to. I mean, legal, finance, IT, commercial, they're all converging. So you have to amplify a bit your skills, but I tend to agree with you. It's the potential is incredible.
It's a new skill set, but one that I think is very important to hone, especially for the next generation coming up. I would say that anybody that's, looking into communications, looking into this field, you're not going to be able to get around it. You're going to have to use technology, in quite a strong way, but also keeping your own unique take on it is equally important.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Good
it's a
to
catch
know.
22.
And so, what about the? I mean, we discussed a bit the supply side. What about the demand side, which is the audience? How do you see people now, after 20 years of 15 years of social media, they became more cynical, they are more sophisticated. How do you see the audience from your perspective?
It's interesting. So I think that I've heard a lot of, anecdotal evidence around that the audience has actually dumbed down, not become more sophisticated, but become more, I think because we're bombarded with content 24/7, whereas, maybe in the 80s before I was born, I could have walked down the street, not thought about my cell phone, seen a billboard ad or something like this, but it wouldn't be 24/7 in my face. A TV is not always on. Whereas now, today, we have constant messaging, marketing materials, shown around us literally 24/7. Even people want to put glasses on that it
Yeah.
comes to them 24/7. So I think that there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that shows that they've actually reduced their sophistication because they want to kind of escape the constant messaging that they're experiencing in their entertainment life. And I consider media and even casual reading, if you're interested in a specific sector and you're reading the trade magazine about it or reading the newspaper about it, you probably wouldn't want to be it's not like reading an educational paper or something for work where you have to be very attentive and very attuned to what you're reading. So for me, I don't watch media, I don't watch TV, I don't consume casual media, I don't have the time. So I think that,
Do you use
uh,
Instagram or any
yeah,
other social
Instagram,
media?
social
Okay,
media
you do.
every once
Fine.
in a while, but honestly, there's no time when you're working in the kingdom. There's so much to do and so little time, so we gotta continue to press on. But I think that I see that other people think that they've become more sophisticated because they've felt like they've absorbed more media than they were before. But I don't necessarily think that's true. I think we want to escape it more than we want to really, absorb it. At least when we're looking at the entertainment sector of things. Again, it's different when it's for your work or for your, related to your career. I think then people have to kind of buckle down and have more attention, and they're a little bit more sophisticated there. But on an entertainment side, they say that even, a lot of the shows, a lot of the plot lines, etc., have all gone to the same direction. They've all been on the same path because they know what works. They use a formula. It works for a mass number of people. Khalas,
Yeah.
they continue forward the same storyline.
Uh, I'm always a fan of the youth and the next gen leaders. So Saudi, 2/3 of the population, I think, is below 35, median age 32. Just to give a sense of things, Europe, it's 45, 50. So we are very much a different breed. And I see it when we post. Here, it's a much younger population, very active on social media. In Europe, where I come from, maybe it's slightly different. So what would be a suggestion or an advice for a young professional who, finishes university, enters the media sector, and they want to grow, and there are many these days who are now accessing the trade.
Sure. So the number one piece of advice I would give is again around this authenticity bit. So, it's not only in building your own personal brand and staying authentic to who you are, but it's also about relationship building. It's also, being in media, being in communications. It's not something you can do in a silo. It's not something, whether it be internal communications or external communications, there's multiple stakeholders involved, and you have to really hone your relationship building skills. And I think in people are able to read how fake you are from the minute that they meet you. And so I would say that this is something, I know it's a personal skill, it's not necessarily a technical skill, but it's such an important skill to not just fall into being like everybody else. I think, all of us are guilty of it. We see something we like on social media and we all gravitate towards that. But then at the end of the day, again, we're going to all be copy pastes of one another. And that's not going to give you any sort of, competitive advantage in the upcoming market. So I would say
So
stay
find your own
away, be your
voice.
own
Yeah,
person. Yeah,
yeah.
keep your own authentic self.
I mean, if you went back 20 years back, what would you do differently?
Sure. So I think that everything happens for a reason, and my life is 100% proof of that. If you knew my full life story, my parents passed away when I was young, and I lived on my own, and then I, converted to Islam, then I moved to Saudi. All of these things could not have happened, and this trajectory could never have happened. Not only in my career and my personal life, and all elements of my life, if it hadn't been for the tiny sparks that happened when I was just a kid. So I think the thing I would tell myself is like, you're going to be in a completely different place than you would ever expect. I would never in a million years, growing up in a small suburb of Cleveland, Ohio called Brecksville, Ohio, with 16,000 people, would ever think that I would then be able to be in, events where the president is speaking, events where, the most important people in the world are all gathered together, and to be even, a tiny, tiny, tiny contributor to that was out of my imagination. So, the thing I would tell my younger self is you're never going to believe what's to come, but just hold on for the ride. And I think life takes you where it's supposed to take you.
I agree with that. Hold on for the ride, and it's a fun ride to some extent. So, good. I mean, I let you go. Maybe just last 30 seconds.
Yep.
Close out questions. What is your morning routine in Saudi? What do you do in the morning? Is it coffee, tea, music? Well,
I wish I have time for it. We always laugh. I open my eyes and I'm immediately on my phone, which is the worst possible thing you can do. So
before
don't take my
breakfast or after breakfast? Because I start
no
at some
breakfast.
point. I stopped watching
No
emails,
breakfast.
leaving emails before breakfast because I used to do it, and then I said I send sloppy emails. So I said, no, I have to first have breakfast, reactivate my brain, and then. So how you do it? You're able to function at every time of the day, or
Yeah, it's incredible. I think I was in the US for a few weeks, a couple of weeks ago, and I was working on both US time zone, Saudi time zone, and then I would fall asleep for like an hour, and I would wake up in a panic because I didn't finish something. And everything is urgent, especially in communications. Everything is the most important moment, and we're the last person that gets informed. So I think that. I wish I had a healthier routine. I would say go watch Andrew Huberman if you wanted to have an actually healthy routine. But I do believe in getting sunlight in your eyes, and I do believe in taking a walk. So I try to incorporate that a little bit in the morning, but usually, unfortunately, on my phone, responding to everything urgent that happened in my brief period of sleep. So
okay.
don't follow my guideline.
All right. So okay, always on,
Yes.
but as cultural awareness side, what Hannah is saying is very true. In the kingdom, you work a lot. It's a growth story. So the country is really booming in a way. So that's why there is so much happening, and you won't believe it. So if you come to Saudi, be prepared because you're going to work way more than wherever you're coming from.
And you
But
have to come. To see it is to believe it, honestly. I think
absolutely.
before I came here, I never would have expected that everybody would be aligned towards one, strategic vision. I think that's the thing that I appreciate most about being here is, growing up in the States, I think there's a lot, back and forth between different, ideologies and, different opinions. But here, everybody is working towards a common goal and so passionate about working towards it. And for me, that's a dream because things can actually get done that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hana Nemec, thank you very much for your time with us. You've been
Thank you, Matthias.
very kind and generous. I know you have meetings now, but we'll probably have another conversation sometime in the future. Hopefully, something will happen, I'm sure, because of the line of work you are in. And I think we'll speak soon.
Sounds great. Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.